and I said, here's my text. I said, Anderson Cooper just told me guys our age in high school didn't wear Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. Did someone in our junior high or high school wear those jeans? I get back from this girl I went to high school with. David Isolano, Michael Lang. Yes. See, there you go. So they were wearing women's jeans.
He say something really fast.
Yes, you can say something really fast.
He didn't come right out and say, no, they didn't. He goes, maybe you went to an alternative school.
No, what he said was
thing.
Gloria Vanderbilt didn't make men's jeans.
Yes.
Yes.
He didn't say that no guy wore them.
Right, yeah, right. But clearly he didn't answer the question because I asked him, did you wear Gloria Vanderbilt jeans? And he said, my mother didn't make men's jeans. But that wasn't the question I asked.
Did not wear them.
He then slyly said he didn't. All right, enough of that, Kelly Jackson. 910, Big 550, KTRS. Our next guest, I don't know how I got this guy. I don't know how I got roped into this guy. How often are you on John Carney's show? Are you ever on Carney's show?
I am. He's much nicer to me.
Much nicer. You and I have been doing this for 10 years at least, right?
At least,
10 years. You were on with Jack Carney forever, right?
I was on several times with him, right?
And then you were on with Jim White, right?
Jim White, a couple times a week.
Right,
yeah.
and then somehow I adopted you or somehow got you in the wash.
Desperate,
I don't know how that
you
happened.
Were desperate.
John Oldani is our guest, former SIUE professor, and he is a St. Louis folklorian, as well as a prolific writer. How many books have you written?
7.
7 books.
7 books, right.
Your latest book is called St. Louis-isms, looking at racism here in St. Louis.
No.
No?
No, it's looking at...
St. Louis-isms, racism, right?
Yeah, well, it's St. Louis folklore culture based on various folk groups.
Folk groups.
Like seniors and like St. Louis Hoosiers, like nurses, doctors, baseball players.
So seniorisms. And,
some of those in there.
And male-isms and racisms. All right, so this is not a book about isms. It's a book about isms.
About St. Louis
isms.
Talk.
St. Louis isms. Lingo, lore, and the lighter side of life in the Gateway City. John Oldani. First of all, where can we get the book?
You can get it at all at Barnes & Noble. You can get it at all museum bookstores. And you can get it online.
Are there Barnes & Nobles still around?
Yeah, there are.
Okay, right.
At least 3 I'm aware of.
All right, at least 3 Barnes & Nobles out there.
At least.
And you can go to Amazon and look up John Oldani, St. Louis isms, and get it there.
That's right.
This is a book that is, no joking aside, that is great for the St. Louis in your life.
And you could pick up any place. You don't have to read all the technical stuff. Pick it up anywhere.
Right, and this is weird because this is like harkens back to a time when people would actually read books.
That's right.
That's
right.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, how did you get to become a folklorian?
Well, I guess way back, my grandmothers, both of the paternal and paternal, were from Europe.
Okay.
And coming over to tell me stories growing up. And I thought, well, there must be reasons for these things. So I looked at the culture and ended up getting my PhD in American Studies, specializing in folklore, which is the oral traditions would circulate among a folk group. And St. Louis is just filled with them. I mean, I did it on passing on how it works. And I all the way up to Christmas in St. Louis, which was another recent book of mine.
Right. And so your career as a professor was based on folklore?
Yes.
That's a pretty good scam to pull off all these years.
You can get a PhD at Harvard in folklore and Chicago, Berkeley. I taught at Berkeley, a visiting professor, and Florida, and even in Croatia.
So what is folklore? Because there are things that are rumors.
Yeah.
There are things that are fake news.
Yeah.
And then there's folklore. So explain the difference here.
Well, we're talking about the oral traditions which circulate among a people, and they always have to have verifications through at least 3 sources. In other words, how things are passed on from group to group, like Valentine's Day. We know way back in the 3rd century that Valentine was a prisoner and wrote Valentine cards to people outside of prison when he married them. And then so since that time, we celebrated the same vestiges of Valentine's in different approaches as they did way back in the 3rd century.
So hold on a second. Valentine's Day is based on a guy who was thrown in jail and was married women outside of jail?
Well, Claudius did not allow people to get married because he wanted to save men for war, because they would be too busy as family men. So Valentine decided to marry everybody, and they put him in jail. And so he would write from your Valentine to the married couples he married in jail. And also, the Romans celebrated the Lupercalia at the time, which is the second reason why Laura's there, because that was the wolves who raised, the people in Rome, are the founders of Rome, and they would, what they would do is they would take girls' names only out of a box, put them on the young Romans on their sleeve, And that way you know where your heart's on your sleeve. Story from that.
Oh.
So what I'm saying is the Valentine is an ideal folklore because the traditions are still there and we follow them, just like we do at Christmas time.
So he would send Hallmark cards from jail?
With the crown. You had to get the crown, too.
So you're saying that Valentine's Day is not a Hallmark induced
No.
and a ruse to just sell more greeting cards.
That's right. Well, about 2 billion will be sold this year. About 2 billion. And women will get the diamonds, the furs.
Right.
And the men will get socks and underwear.
John Oldani, Ph.D. The book is called St. Louis-isms, Lingo, Lore, and the Lighter Side of the in the Gateway City. Explain to me where the phrase Hoosier in St. Louis comes from.
Well, that's a good question, McGraw. If you live in Indiana, they used to say knocking on the doors, people would say, who's there, who's there? And it became corrupted into Hoosier. But St. Louis now, and we're having a fight with Indiana residents, there are people in St. Louis, especially lawyers, who meet on Friday nights in various craft bar places who try to define what a St. Louis Hoosier is. And it's always much more pejorative than an Indiana Hoosier.
Right. It's a very...
Terrible.
It's negative.
It's negative,
But
right.
it's one of those things where you call yourself a Hoosier,
Right.
and it's sort of funny and acceptable. There's like a self-deprecation to it.
It is, unless you have cousins or in-laws or friends you don't like, you would call them something else. It's our pejorative redneck term.
Well, where did it come from? Do we know?
No, probably from the whole idea of Indiana having it.
Right. But nowhere else in America that I've found, because when people come here and I'm like, oh, that guy's a Hoosier, and they're like, oh, he's from Indiana? No,
Right,
Hoosier means redneck. It means trashy.
right.
It means sort of uncouth and
Right.
But people have a hard time grappling with that. But nowhere else in America is that phrase the way we say it.
No, we've never found it that way. But in St. Louis, you can identify communities with the term. I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, if I said to you, I live in this city or that city, you could tell me something about it because it's identified through the lore, through the actual vocabulary itself.
Yeah.
If you talk about people living in southern parts of St. Louis, for instance, they would have the redneck definition there.
Yeah. Or do more Hoosiers live in South County or North County?
They're all over now. They're all over now.
We allow them all over.
Right.
All right.
They're all
Because
over.
I know it's so funny because so you're talking about somebody and you're like, he's a St. Charles Hoosier. He's a South County Hoosier, which almost there's like a different a different meaning for a South County Hoosier as opposed to a St. Charles Hoosier.
Oh, there is. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You tell them it's like going to Walmart and watching people at Walmart.
Right.
And you can see what they wear. It becomes a full costume.
Right.
And you can identify why they're there.
Yeah. All right. So being a folklore professor, clearly St. Louis is a rich ground for you to study.
Really is.
Have you found that other places are as rich? I mean, because everyone says St. Louis is unique. Is it really, or is every place like this?
No, it is unique because it's like, I hate to be so, what's the word, city pride, but the gateway to the West.
Right.
More people in St. Louis have the optimistic conversion beliefs. In other words, if you come here, if a broken mirror, for instance, is bad luck.
Right.
People believe that superstition. But in St. Louis, if you take that and broken mirror, throw it into running water, you have neutralized the luck. It's a conversion. So St. Louis, the optimism of people passing through here, going west, makes us a different kind of lore.
Because so many people came through, we were touched by so many different cultures and things that we picked it all up along the way.
Right. I have like 300,000 different folk genres. And right now we're working on things we're finding I work with grade school kids in jump rope rhymes and different rhymes. We're finding a lot of that about AK-47s and abortion and all kinds of crimes. So the reflection of the lore is in their rhymes and what they do. We're now collecting, McGraw, it's interesting, we're collecting blonde men jokes. More than ever now. In the past year and a half, 2 years, blonde jokes are so different now because every man is stupid that way. Does it reflect our president? I don't know. I'm trying to figure, because that's what folklore does.
All right, your chapter 1 is St. Louis lingo.
Yeah.
Warsh, farty,
Right. Wrench.
crick, all those things.
Wrench.
Explain that to
Well,
us.
the South Town, Dutch town in South St. Louis, the German influence, where they pronounce things, they always wash their dishes in the zinc and then they rinse them. Okay, and that's where you get the people who are bonded together use that same kind of language, and so it comes from the German people who settle there. taking the English stuff itself and corrupting the words.
Yeah. What are some of your favorites in this book? St. Louis-isms, the lingo, lore, and the lighter side of life in the Gateway City.
Well, what I'm doing now is my favorite stuff are the senior citizens. I'm working out a lot of the senior citizen places, and they're saying our grandkids don't want us around because we can't do texting. They're saying, Grandpa, Grandma, get with texting, just something new. So now what they're doing is they're actually developing a lore. For instance, GGLKI, gotta go, laxative kicking in. This is what that's what they tell each other. Now, the kids don't know that. So they said they got their own lore because they're talking about stuff which affects them as old people, and they're trying to make it into their own culture.
Does texting help or hurt with this?
Helps a lot.
Because it's written down?
Oh, it's written down, exactly.
Right.
Just like graffiti. You can take a course in graffiti, University of Chicago or Harvard. We cannot say what we feel about the president or the past presidents, but we can write it on a bathroom wall because we feel something about that, and the world will see it because we're all together using the bathroom.
How about that?
We all have that same kind of humanity.
Yeah. This one, the choking Doberman in St. Louis Hills.
Oh yeah, this is great. I'm excited about this stuff. If you they tell the story about these urban belief tales. A lady came home from work and she found her dog choking, so she raced him to the veterinarian. He said, "Don't go back," and he removed 2 fingers from the dog's throat. So he said, "Don't go back there." They called the police. They went to the lady's house in St. Louis Hills, and they found a robber inside the closet cowering. Well, it turned out that the fingers were African American. So they're saying, now you've got to be very careful. But that same story was collected in Afton, and they found the fingers of Bosnian man. They collected it in Valley Park. They found the fingers of a Spanish person. They collected it in Imperial, and they found the Muslim fingers. The point I'm making is that did not happen, but because the culture is now out there talking about immigrants and talking about Black Lives Matter, these kinds of cultural things, they're now making up stories about that, and we're believing that. So that's why folklore reflects the culture.
You have a whole chapter on Bosnians in here.
I do, a whole chapter, yeah.
Because Bosnians have, like the Germans and the Irish and the Italians, have now weaved their way into St. Louis folklore?
And made a contribution. So it's good to know what their proverbs are like, their food customs, their clothing customs, and it's good stuff because it reflects that culture.
Because the Bosnians have been around a good 20, 25 years, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think probably more than that, but there's 100,000 or more of them now.
So give us a Bosnian folklore that is now a part of St. Louis history.
It would have to do with coffee. The whole idea is that how do Bosnians face the day? Carrying around coffee with them. We're saying the stronger the better. So we identify with that, and we could say, okay, we understand that that's part of their food culture and how it means, but become part of St. Louis too.
Right.
We also talk about their clothes. They all wear. They like to say the Bosnian clothes are lounging pajamas. And so that becomes a folk custom. And I even have Bosnian jokes, and I have Bosnian superstitions.
You also have a chapter here, John Oldani, on the Irish. Haven't you dissected and picked over the Irish enough in these 7 books?
No one's ever done a thing on Irish folklore. So I lived in Dogtown for several months learning about Irish folklore. And McGraw, it's easy to say that the Irish probably are the biggest influence in the St. Louis culture. I mean, they just moved across the whole city from downtown all the way across. And everything in medicine, education, cops, have Irish influence.
Is it the Irish influence, or is it, the Catholic, I guess, is too big because the Italians and the French and the Irish all came in, and sort of that's where the Catholic comes in.
Mostly, but the Irish sure helped it.
Yeah.
Especially with the nuns and the priests.
Right. Yeah.
And they're idolized in the Irish community.
Give us, John Oldani, give us one more from the book St. Louis-isms.
St. Louis-isms. How can you tell? Let me think now. How do blonde men's brain cells die? Alone.
I don't know how.
Alone.
Oh,
there's only one brain cell. How do you?
Now I know why Jack Carney had you on all the time. He sounded much funnier next to you.
I'm saying it because that's the latest thing coming out here now. We're trying to reflect the culture coming out, and it's really important to do that. And so we're seeing it. And also, I got to work with the baseball Cardinals.
This ought to be good.
That's in it. I can't use names. They're a superstitious group.
You just said the Cardinals.
not. The,
Oh, when did you work with the Cardinals? Recently?
Oh, yeah, several years ago. Before I wrote the book, Mike Shannon allowed me to got me in the locker room.
Well, now are they Mike Shannon-isms or are they St. Louis-isms?
They're St. Louis-isms, and the clothing they wear into the uniform, why it's important to them, even the socks they wear,
Right.
and the things they do before the game.
Well, hold on a second. So superstitions are also folklore too?
Oh, I've got about 100,000 of those.
Right.
They relate to the culture because we live in an anxious society, and people say, well, knock on wood. That goes way back to the Druids, and we still do it today.
Well,
it doesn't hurt.
I say knock on wood. What does it mean?
It means the Druids believe that if you knocked on the trees, they say, I hope I win the lottery.
Right.
So they know the gods are all surrounding him, and the gods live in the trees. So they knocked on the trees saying, I know you're there, I respect it, and I bow to you, but at the same time, it won't hurt to knock on wood.
So
we
in
knock
other
on
words,
wood.
say, I haven't gotten into an accident in 3 years.
Exactly.
Knock on
Right.
wood.
Knock on wood.
Hello, gods. I'm thanking
Right.
you for not getting in an accident.
Right.
And
I know you're there, but I still doesn't hurt to do it.
how about that? John O'Danny, St. Louis-isms, lingo, lore, and the lighter side of life in the Gateway City. One more time, where can we get the book?
Barnes & Noble, museum bookstores, and on Amazon.
Do they really eat dogs in Dogtown?
No. but the Filipinos did at the World's Fair. The president had sent dogs to them at the World's Fair when they had in their village. They definitely did.
The Filipinos
Yes.
in St. Louis
The Igorots.
ate dogs in 1904?
Yes.
Where were the Filipinos living in 1904?
Well, there was the village at the World's Fair. They had
Okay.
a village there.
Oh, okay.
And then they would have the dogs sent in. But it's so close to Dogtown, that's how it got its name. But it really got its name from the miners who came and dug holes that looked like dog hovels.
What about ghostly hitchhikers in Florissant? That's clearly true.
Oh, that is true, right? They especially come the night before the prom or the night of the prom, and the street between Bellefontaine and Calvary Cemetery.
Do you have? Let me see. One more here. What about the zombies in Wildwood or St. Louis Hills?
Oh yeah, there's more now than ever. If you go down to Wildwood, there's a street which I can't name, but if you go down that street into the woods, you will hear people screaming, or you will have people who will attack you. Now,
And that's in Wildwood and in St. Louis Hills.
both.
Yeah,
Both.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
Are they the same zombies or are they different
No,
zombies?
different zombies.
Different zombies.
Depends
Important
on
to
who
know.
had died earlier.
GGLKI means what again?
That is, gotta go laxative kicking in.
Gotta go, laxative kicking in, and that's what you're telling me that seniors are texting their grandkids.
Oh yeah, our LWO, Lawrence Welks on. Our BYOT, bring your own teeth.
There's something wrong with you.
And the kids don't know this, but at the same time, they're into computers. You understand what culture is?
John O'Danny, you're always welcome here, my friend. 7 books and
Thanks,
counting.
McGraw. Thank you.
The book is bookstores everywhere, including the 3 Barnes & Nobles that we know are still available.
Right.
And museums everywhere, the History Museum.
Oh yeah, the Botanical Gardens.
Botanical Gardens got them.
Yeah.
And Amazon.com's got them.
Amazon.com.
Do you have any book signings anywhere here shortly?
Not coming up. No, I just finished some.
Good thing you came on the show after the book signings. Folklore. Folklore and very, very nice man, John O'Danny. St. Louis-isms, lingo, lore, and the lighter side of life in the Gateway City. Thanks for coming in, my friend.
Thanks, McGraw. Appreciate it.
9:20.